It goes back to that kids these days. And I think we've been asking that question all the way back to Socrates and Aristotle. They were complaining about other generations. So it's the same thing. We are repeating over and over again.
I think your approach is more of how can we learn from the one that is coming, and then backwards, what can you learn from the new generation?
Generational gaps don't have to divide us. They can deepen our leadership if we let them.
You're asking the owner of the organization to be the psychologist. You're asking the owner of the organization to be all of these other roles that is like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, why do I have to do this?
We need mentors of thought, not just managers of tasks. For decades, leaders have echoed this same complaint. Kids these days, they don't want to work. But what if it's not about laziness? What if it's about leadership asking for a reframe? In this episode, we'll explore the deeper truths behind generational differences and how work values have shifted from stability to purpose, and why the future of leadership, well, it demands curiosity, empathy, and mentorship over control. Today, we're going to do something different. Diana, the producer of the show, is here to help us bring the unfiltered voices of leadership and HR, confessions, tough questions, and those moments we don't always say out loud. This is where it gets real. Diana, let's get started.
Let's do this. Okay, so we received a couple of questions from HR and leaders alike, and I'm going to read them out loud so that you can answer their deep questions.
Awesome.
So let's start. Let's go right in. Donna, an HR director, sent this. My dad used to complain about millennials. Now my peers complain about Gen Z. Honestly, I catch myself doing it too. Are we just repeating the same old story? And the other question she asked is, why do you think every generation ends up blaming the one before it?
I love this question because I hear it all the time. It goes back to that kids these days, right? And I think we've been asking that question all the way back to Socrates and Aristotle. They were complaining about other generations. So it's the same thing. We are repeating the same story over and over again because we are looking for someone to blame, right? So you don't think the way I think, so it must be because of your generation, because my generation would be wrong. My generation is the best generation. Ask any generation. They're going to tell you their generation is the best generation. So because we're looking for someone to blame, and I would also say because we're not listening to each other. So you might think the solution is A. I might think the solution is B, right? So how are we going to come together? Well, if you don't agree with me, then it's your fault. Instead of let me authentically and genuinely listen, the whole idea of being curious and tell me more about why you think the way you think so that we can learn from each other. Like that's really the key. Because of my experiences, I might have a different idea, a different approach. That's not wrong. It's just different. And because of your lived experiences, you might have a different opinion, a different approach. And that's not wrong. But how can we together come to a maybe even better idea because of our lived experiences?
It's about complementing each other, not like putting ourselves against each other.
Yes.
The one thing that to me always comes through is like, but wait a minute. You created that generation. Like
Yes.
You are responsible for what's coming now, and
Correct.
now you're not happy.
Right.
Don't you take a little bit of responsibility on that?
Right. There has to be, because we're complaining about the kids we produced, the kids we raised. So we have to take some responsibility for that and look back at, okay, well, why are they thinking the way they're thinking?
And I think your approach is more of how can we learn from the one that is coming, and then backwards, what can you learn from the new generation?
It's mutual.
Yeah.
It's a mutual sense of respect and trust and curiosity and communication, because honestly, that's where the thinking starts. If we are in silos and we only think the way we think, and we don't think about other perspectives and other ideas, innovation's never going to happen. Communication's never going to take place. This whole sense of curiosity and collaboration has to work together. And we have to be able to listen to each other and learn from each other. I mean, think about putting a whole group of different generations in one room.
Wow.
Trying to find the solution to one issue. Can you imagine the incredible ideas that would come out?
Yeah. If our egos would get out of the way,
that's essential.
that would be that's where the magic happens, which I think is one of the main problems a lot of companies are coming to you for, which is we want innovation. And then what comes with that also is part of the recipe.
It's the old adage of do it because I said so.
Yikes. All right. Here comes the next one.
Okay.
So Maya, an HR manager, sent us, we invest months into training and then young employees leave for another company. It feels like betrayal. Ouch, ouch, ouch.
Yep.
And then it says, what blind spots do we fall into when we see turnover only as disloyalty? And what could leaders be missing here?
I love this because we just did a national survey, a study, an entire study of 1,000 working Americans. And 44% of employees and 59% of executives are saying they're leaving their jobs because there's not value being put upon their thinking.
What?
So it's not a betrayal. It's you're not listening to what I have to say. So yes, you trained me and I appreciate that. But now that you've trained me, I see things that could be improved. I might see holes in the training or in the organization that I have these great ideas, but I don't feel like I'm being listened to. I don't feel like my ideas are being valued. So you know what? I'm going to go someplace else where they do value what I think and what I say. That was a wow statement that came out of our study. Because think about the ROI of that. And I understand the idea that Maya is saying, like, I'm feeling betrayed. And I understand that.
And I think she's saying it,
betrayal.
but I think she's saying it from the younger generations. Like where you're coming from, it's more like executives, right?
Yes.
Am I getting it right?
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But employees are doing it too. It's not just the executives. It's even the employees who are, maybe they see something on the factory floor that could be changed, right? And they go to the executive and they say, I'm working every single day, 8 hours a day. We could make it better if we only, and the executive says, no, we got this. So that I think is what we're seeing. So you're not allowing, there's not a safe place for people to be creative and critical thinkers because it's just getting shut down. So if it's going to be shut down, why do I even bother? Right? And so I'll either find a job that suits me better or, and this is a big one, I'm going to quietly quit. Right? So I'm just going to do my job. I'm not going to put much effort into it. I'm just going to be here, get paid, get my paycheck and leave because
there's no motivation. And what would you say is the cost of turnover, like beyond just people coming and going?
Right. Well, and the studies are showing that 1.5%, so 1.5 times your salary, it's what it's costing to replace you. So if you're making $100,000 a year, it's going to cost $150,000 to replace you. Think about it, the training, the more benefits, the time it takes for you to be caught up with what's going on.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's going to cost a lot. Companies are going to cost a lot. And here's the other thing. They're losing good talent because of it. Because what if you were the perfect person for that job, but we didn't listen to you and now you left? Now I've got to go find someone to replace you. And I just lost really great talent.
You know what I thought about when you just said that? I don't know why, but Pixar came in the picture.
Yes.
The guy that created Pixar, he brought this idea to Disney, and he was like, "Hey, yo, people, this is the new direction of work. This is how we do animations now." And they're like, "No, we're good. He left,
right?
And he created Pixar. To then, fast forward in time, they bought Pixar because it was just too expensive to have that competitor. So I think
that's a great example, because if we're not listening to people, if we're not being open to the ideas, which goes back to your first question about generations, right? If we're not listening to each other, then nothing is progressing and we're going to lose out.
Wow. Okay. Here comes the next one.
Okay.
I'll throw you a new one.
Okay.
Jordan, as CEO, sent this. I worked my way up in a pay your dues culture. But now my youngest hires want meaningful work from day one. I don't know if you guys relate on the other side. Part of me thinks they're unrealistic, but part of me wonders if they're teaching us something. So, how do leaders know if their younger employees are rejecting hard work or simply redefining what meaningful work looks like? You go.
I love it. So here's the thing, and maybe I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but we've got to listen to each other, and we've got to be curious about what is behind the motivation of our workers. So, for example, if I don't know you and I don't know what's going on in your life, and I don't know about, I don't know, maybe your husband, your kids, your family, what you do on the outside, then I'm not going to have the empathy or the understanding that's needed for me to understand you. So that maybe right now you need a break. I mean, our study also showed that the number one barrier to deeper thinking is exhaustion, mental fatigue, and overload. So we might need to look at ourselves and say, as a leader, am I overloading my employees so that they're not working at the capacity that I need them to work at? Or is there something going on the outside that maybe I'm not aware of that is causing them to do that? Then, once I figure that out, then I can go back and say, Diana, I've noticed that there seems to be something up lately. What's going on? Talk to me. How can I help you? Instead of, Diana, your production is really falling behind. I'm really disappointed in you.
But I cannot help it. I'm going to be the devil's advocate.
Please do.
Because it feels like you're asking the owner of the organization to be the psychologist. You're asking the owner of the organization to be all of these other roles that is like, I didn't sign up for this. Like, why do I have to do this? So what would you say to someone who's like, I have enough on my plate. I am, as the business owner, I am responsible for your paycheck, for your security. I don't want to be responsible for your emotional workload, for your emotional being, for like all of these additional things that is just like, frankly, not my problem. And I know it sounds really shitty to say it like that, but I could feel the weight of them being like, this is where your job begins and this is where my job ends, kind of a thing. So what would you say to
So I'm going to be a little bit of a tough love person here and go, suck it up. I don't care. And let me give you an example, right? I was an educator for 25 years in the classroom. If I could just say, I am here just to teach you how to read and write, that would be great. But you know what? That's not how it works. I was also their psychologist. I was also their parent at times. Sometimes I was one of their best friends. And I had to juggle a lot, not just grading, not just let me have you read this short story, right? And let's discuss themes. I had to think about the mental well-being of my students. And that's what's shifted in leadership now. We need leaders to start thinking more like good educators. We need mentors of thought, not just managers of tasks. So if all I'm doing is saying, well, did you do this? Check. Did you do that? Check. Did you do that? Check. Again, we're going to have the quiet quitting because we've heard over and over again in our studies that people are wanting meaningful, purposeful work. And in fact, they're valuing it more than pizza parties, than benefits, even more than salary. Sometimes they just want to know that what they're doing has meaning and purpose.
But when you say that, suck it up.
Yeah.
I could also turn around and tell my employee, I'm thinking out loud, like, suck it up. And I think in a way, what you're also bringing forward is, can we amplify humanity? Mm-hmm. So I as much as I want to be the devil's advocate here, because that's what I think my role here in this show is I'm bringing forward the voices of the people who are in the other side, right?
Yep.
And I don't want to like sugarcoat it either. So it gets to be a little bit of both. And I get your side too, which is there is a human component into this that we want to add, which I heard through what your example with being a teacher. When you are a teacher, your job doesn't end by teaching them to multiply. Like when someone comes to work because their parent just died.
Right.
Like, how are you going to hold that? And they're still your students. Right. So,
and I still have to teach them. And that's the idea of psychological safety. That as leaders, we have to have a safe place. I'm not saying that leaders need to all of a sudden be doctors of psychology.
Or Mother Teresa tampoco.
No. But what I'm saying is you need to be genuine, authentic humans. You actually have to care. Tell me what's going on before you jump to the conclusion that they're lazy or that they can't do the job, right? So all I'm asking is be a human, right? Be kind, be empathetic, and think, okay, let's first see what the human is doing before you go to the spreadsheet that shows
Performance.
Exactly. If you're listening and realizing your team is craving something more than management, head to katietrowbridge.com to explore the Deeper Thinking Advantage Leadership Lab. My research-backed system is designed to transform managers into mentors and build cultures people don't want to leave. Now, back to the episode.
Here goes the next one.
Okay.
Sophia, a director of HR, shared, I get the sense my team feels safer venting on TikTok than talking to me. I want them to be honest with me, but I don't know how to build that trust. And here's the question. What practical steps can leaders take to create psychological safety so employees feel seen and heard inside the workplace, not just online?
So it's interesting, Diana, when you look at the fact that two of the big questions were about psychological safety.
Yeah.
Right? So obviously this is a big issue that a lot of companies are facing. And when I go back to the whole suck it up idea, I want to definitely say that this isn't easy, right? This isn't a switch that you can just flip and be like, okay, now I understand humans. Now I understand this next generation. And now I understand, like, that's not feasible. That's not realistic. But what we can do is we can be open to listening to different perspectives. We can be empathetic. And I'll go back to that whole genuine listening idea again. So practically, what can we do? Yes, they are putting things out on TikTok or Instagram or whatever is the latest social media because they're not feeling heard anywhere else. So if they're being heard, genuinely heard, there wouldn't be a need to share things out on social media because I'm being heard somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So practically, what can you do? You know, I love how people will be like, oh, I'll do a suggestion box. People can put things in. No, you know what you need? An open door policy. I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to genuinely reflect, not fix.
Okay, good perspective. Thank you for that.
Genuinely reflect on what it is that you're saying. Because I think leaders are so quick to say, oh, no, wait, I know what you're talking about. Let me fix it. And that's not what our employees want. A lot of times they want you to listen, take time to think about what they're saying, and then come back to me and say, okay, I've thought about this. Here's what I'm thinking. Even if it's not what I thought, even if you disagree with me, but you know what? You took time to reflect and think about what I said, and now you're coming back to me with a really good response. Not you know what, I'll deal with it. Don't worry about it, I got it. And that's where we jump. Leaders jump to the control, right? I mean, even our study shows that 67% of organizations say they value creativity, but what they're rewarding is conformity. So if that's the fact, then of course they're going to say I'm not being heard. I'm going to put it on Instagram. I'm going to put my complaints on TikTok.
And what steps can they take? Like, what are some things that you mentioned open door policy.
Yep.
Like, what else do you think that could help them?
I think that being available, being present. So I'll give you an example of a manager that I worked with that is just phenomenal. He took time to walk out onto the factory floor. He took time to stop in at the cubicles. He didn't stay in his office. So he was visible. He also knew his employees so well that he was able to joke with them, have fun with them, build that trust and respect so that they knew he was a safe place to go talk to. That's just simply going into the break room and having a cup of coffee, not having a Keurig in your office where you just fill up the coffee and have a drink and you never come out,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's being visible to the people that you work with, joking around with them, having fun. That's one of the things that I think has missed because we've gone so much to remote. We don't have those water cooler moments,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we need to continue to work on that and facilitate that, whether you're remote, hybrid, or back to the office, physically getting out of your office, making a lap, taking the time to say, how you doing? That outfit looks great today. I mean, I know that's a little funny, but I mean, like, it's that noticing,
Yeah.
right? It's noticing and mentoring.
There are two things that stood out when you said. One of them is to be available and to be present.
Mhm.
They're two different things.
Mhm.
And they don't necessarily happen simultaneously.
No.
So that stood out in what you say. And another part of me, like the little voice behind that says like, what about people who think like you cannot be friends with your employees? They will not respect you. What would you say to someone like that? And can you give us a sense of direction between presence and availability?
Yeah. So let's look at availability and presence first.
Okay.
I might be available. My door might be open, but I'm checking my phone as you're talking to me. I'm answering email while you're talking to me. So I'm available. Sure, come on in, no problem. But I'm not making eye contact. I'm not nodding. I'm not repeating what you're saying. So you're not present. I mean, how many times have you gone to a restaurant and you've seen a couple sitting across from each other and they're both on their phones?
Yeah.
They might be available for that date night, but they're not present for that date night. Put the phones away, put it on silent, shut your laptop, look at the person, and actually listen. That's being present, right? So that's the big difference.
Perfect. So you may have limited availability, but full-time presence.
Correct.
So as an invitation for the people who are listening is like maybe potentially create available hours during the week where your job is to be present. And that doesn't take away from your, like your time. Sometimes they're so pressed on time that time is precious.
Yes. But here's the thing too. Let's say you're super busy, you're swamped, and you don't have time to be present. Simply saying, Diana, I'm going to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. I want to be here for you. I want to be present for you. And right now I feel like I'm not going to be. So let's put something on my calendar where I know that I can give you 100% of my time and my brain. Just simply acknowledging the fact you need me. And right now is probably not the best time. I go back to think about when you're a parent,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or going back to the education, which I love to go back to education and teachers. I can't always be present because I have so much else going on, but I can make sure I come back to you. And I think that's got to be key. It's got to be key.
And then the other side was when I was asking you about those people that think I cannot be friends or there's a barrier,
Yeah.
like there's something. What would you say to someone who has that mindset?
And I would say they're right. I would say absolutely. There has to be a point where even as a parent or as an educator, or I know what's better in this situation, but I want to listen to you and I want to hear from you. I'm not saying let's be best friends because sometimes that line can get super blurry, right? Because there might be a point where you do have to do some interventions, right? You might have to say, I've noticed this and we have to make some corrections. That's going to happen, right? Your child is going near the hot stove. You're going to stop them because you have the life experience to know, that's going to hurt, right? So there might be that point, but that doesn't mean you still don't care for them, trust them, respect them, listen to them, right? So there has to be that balance, and that's not easy, Diana. It is so hard to find that flow
Mm-hmm.
of I want to hear you, but I'm also your boss. But there has to be that barrier, but you have to know that it's like let me use a poem by Robert Frost, right? He talks about having a wall, okay, a fence.
Mhm.
And that there's being a good neighbor means that you have a fence. But sometimes that fence gets cracks in it. Needs to be fixed. And it can be one neighbor who fixes it, but that still needs fixing on the other side. So the other neighbor has to come over. And there has to be that point where you talk to each other over the fence. But the fence is still there. There's still a line of this is my property, this is your property. But you know what? We take time to talk to each other over the fence. And I think that that's a beautiful illustration of what it means to balance being a boss and being a friend. We still have that fence, but we can talk over it and then fix it, build it, make it stronger together.
And I think like it depends also on the context of things, because sometimes the neighbor can come over and I feel like we live in a time where we get to be aware that we can hold two truths at the same time.
Yes.
We can be happy and sad at the same time. We humans have the capability to, I always use this example of being super happy that our child is getting married and being super sad that she's not our little baby anymore.
Mhm.
Like we get to hold two things. Like it's not like this or that the world is
Right.
not binary on its own.
Right.
So I think like that invitation to, we have lived for so long thinking like it's either this or that. And I
Right.
think what if
Right.
it could be both?
Well, and I think that the educator in me always cried in May when my seniors would leave. And I would always say to them, I'm crying for two reasons. One, because I'm going to miss you so much. My classroom is going to be totally empty. But I'm so excited for you because your future is now open, right? And so I think that there has to be this embracing of that. And sometimes I think leaders forget that because I think they forget to be the mentors of I want you. My goal for you should be that you experience who you are to the fullest capacity so that then you can become a leader in the future. And I think sometimes we forget that because we want you to stay in that position because I can keep you in that position and you can stay in that position. So do what I say, sit there for 8 hours and do the work. Instead of my role is to mentor you to become the leader that's going to help the next generation and the next phase of our business. Like, how cool is that? How cool is humans that we can have two truths at the same time?
I love that. I love that. Okay, next. I think this is the last one from this series, but
Okay.
let's do this. One executive confessed, this one was anonymous, they didn't send their name. Sometimes, even with everything I know, I catch myself thinking, kids these days, they just don't get it. I hate that thought, but it creeps in. Katie, have you ever caught yourself slipping into that mindset?
Mhm.
And what advice do you give leaders who are still unlearning it?
And here's the thing. The person that he's probably talking about was saying older people these days, right? They just don't get it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's right. That's the whole thing that's happening right now is you don't get it. Well, you don't get it. So then who's getting it?
We don't get it.
Right. That's the whole point. I think together we have to embrace the fact that we don't get it. And so how are we going to get it? By working together and coming together. Have I done that? Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. I mean, I think about my experience as an educator and now as a leader. Do you know how many generations I've seen come in and out and dealt with the parents and dealt with the administration? That's a lot of different things that educators have had to juggle on a daily basis,
Yes.
right? I mean, I couldn't go into a cocktail party and then somebody would say, oh, what do you do for a living? And I'd say, oh, I'm an educator. And they would go, oh, must be nice to have summers off. And I want to say, oh, you just don't get it. You have no idea what you're talking about. And that's not even generational. That's just people being different. And we talked about this earlier of my life experience versus your life experience. It's taught us different things. So absolutely, have I gone to kids these days or parents these days or administrators these days? I mean, put anything in front of these days, right? Because for us, it's just an excuse. It's just someone to go back to, as I said earlier, and blame.
It's easier when there's no accountability on my side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what do you need to do? Because I think that that's the key. We can talk about this, but what are the practical steps? And I think one of the things is we call it metacognition, thinking about your thinking. For us being self-aware is so key. So that when you think about blank these days, you catch yourself going, oh, shoot, I just fell into that trap. What can I do to make sure I handle the situation differently? Just even recognizing it, acknowledging it. That's number one key. Then number two is, okay, I've got to start asking questions.
Oh.
So tell me why. What if? How about we start with the questions first before you jump to the answer and the conclusion? So instead of you start saying, oh, kids these days, they just don't get it. Maybe it's, I wonder what they're thinking and how that differs from me, right? But asking those questions instead of just writing it off as kids these days, they just don't get it. Because maybe you don't get it. And that's tough to swallow, right? I mean, that's really hard for us to say, oh, maybe we're the ones in the wrong. And maybe we're not. But we're not going to know unless we ask the questions and the follow-up ideas.
And what if we're missing part of the picture?
Absolutely. And again, going back, we're not going to know unless we ask.
Yeah. I don't know who I learned this from, but I thought it was brilliant. It was something like, a lot of people get triggered when they get asked why. Like, why feels like defiance. Why feels like...
I told you that.
It can feel...
I told you that.
Maybe it was you. But what I learned that, and I taught my daughters this because it also helps me, it helps them and it helps me. And it's like to ask what, instead of why, a better question to ask is, what makes you think like that? Like, what is happening that leads you to that? Because it feels less threatening.
It is. Completely. People will shut down. You say why? I'm going to shut down. I'm going to get defensive and I'm going to shut down. I'm not going to answer your question. Or I'll answer it with one word. But if you say something like, tell me more.
That's another one. Yeah.
Tell me more. Why are you thinking the way you're thinking? Huge difference. Because now I am curious. I want to know.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely listening.
Yeah.
And it gives you a chance to then say, oh, okay, you authentically want to hear what I have to say? Amazing. Let me tell you, right? It opens up a world that maybe wasn't there before you even said, tell me more.
And it disarms people what gave you that idea rather than why feels more confrontational in a way. So those are language and tools that people can use so they can actually create that a very environment for that curiosity, for that engagement.
Right. And I love what you just said, because I think environment is huge. It's that culture, right? If we as leaders inspire that kind of environment and culture, that can change everything in an organization. But if it doesn't exist, Diana, thinking is going to shut down. It's just going to shut down. So it's something we have to work at on a daily basis. It's not a one and done. It's a daily basis. We have to create an environment where curiosity, creative critical thinking, connection is infused in everything we do. From good morning, how are you today? To we have a meeting, a staff meeting, to have a great weekend. It's got to be there.
So what would think, based on this conversation, your 3 walk away ideas you want your audience to stay with, as the main conversation is how to lead Gen Z, how to lead these generations that have different ways of absorbing, creating, and expressing. So what would you say to them?
Well, I love that, because I think that Gen Z is an incredible generation. And you have to remember that these are just trends of a generation. There's going to be different kinds of people in every single generation. You can't just stereotype and say, oh, well, you're a Gen Z, therefore you are blank, right? Because we're all different. We all have different things. But I think one of the things about working with Gen Z that we have to embrace and love about them is that they want meaning. And when they question you, they're not being defiant. They're not being rebellious. They genuinely want to know why. Like, they genuinely want to know, how come we're doing it this way? Or what if we, because they have a real sense of creativity. They want to be invested in what they're doing. They want to find meaning and purpose in what they're doing. And we have to honor that and encourage that. And I would also say that we have to remember what we were like at that age. So I might be in my 50s, but I gotta remember what I was like when I was in my 20s and 30s. And the things that we were going through, the things that we were experiencing, and how we had the people who are now, boomers, saying to us, stay in your lane, right? Do what I say. So there's that, again, that goes back to empathy, right? We have to put ourselves in their position. So number one, I would say genuinely listening to Gen Z, genuinely respecting what they have to say, genuinely asking, I would love to hear your opinion on this. I would love to hear what you're thinking. And then I think another big key is to asking for feedback. Sometimes that can be really hard, especially if it's feedback we don't want to hear. But asking Gen Z, so how might I help you do better at your job? How might I inspire you and mentor you? And I think asking for genuine feedback and listening to it and taking it to heart, not writing it off, I think is key. So questions, ask good questions, be curious, ask for feedback. And then I think one of the things that they really need more than anything is time and space. If they're mentally fatigued and feel like they're overwhelmed with life in general, then we need to give them time and space to reflect and think for themselves and be genuinely curious about each other. We need to create those water cooler moments where we have time to get to know each other and trust each other. Because as a team, we need to work together to make whatever it is that we're doing more impactful, more successful. But if we're not allowing this generation to use their skills, to take the time, then we are at fault because we're not mentoring them to learn and see what they need to learn and see. And it just ended with putting our ego in check. It's not all about us. It's not all about us as the leader. Like, humble yourself, be vulnerable, and say, I'm having a tough time with this. What do you guys think? Right? And I think that's hard. It's really hard for leaders, CEOs, vice presidents, directors of anything to say to a 25, 30, 35-year-old, I could learn from you. But can you imagine if we learned from each other? How amazing.
What are the risks of those that are like stubborn and be like, I've been there, done that. Like, I'm not changing. Like, screw this. Either they go my way or they can go what are their risks?
And I've heard that over and over and over again.
I'm not a total bad.
No. I've heard that in my consulting. Like, I'm just going to do the way this worked for me before, Katie. It'll work for me again. Or I'm not catering to these entitled.
Ouch.
Yeah. Right?
Who's entitled right there?
Exactly. It's putting the ego, the attitude.
Oh, God.
In check. Right? We're not always right. You're not always right. And I think that part of it too, and it's been proven over and over again, that creating a culture where risk and failure is appreciated, not discouraged, is key. And that means that even as leaders, we have to take the risk to listen, the risk to be open, the risk to thinking, maybe I need to do things a little differently, right? So absolutely, I get the stubborn, I do it my way because I said so. I know what I'm talking about. They don't. I have years of experience in this, Katie.
But what is the risk? What are they, if they continue with this mindset, stubbornness and this mindset, what are they losing? Because I feel like unless they understand what's at risk, their way is going to be their way and screw it. And it's funny because it's in the name of entitlement towards someone else where they don't realize that, buddy, like there's a little bit of, if not a lot of entitlement in that sentence. Well,
and I'll go back to what we talked about earlier. They're going to leave. The ROI of having to replace that really good, talented person, that person who could have made huge strides in your company because you were closed-minded, because you had that mindset, they just quit. They just went and found a company who did appreciate them. And that's the risk. I would also say the risk is on yourself, your growth, your ability to be a lifelong learner, your ability to be even a better person. If you don't listen and you're not open, think about how much you're limiting yourself, your leadership, your company. That's even a risk. So personally, I'm taking a risk. Financially, I'm taking a risk. And mentally, because now I have not everybody can solve everything. And then we're going back to that mental fatigue as of the leader. If I don't share the responsibility of some of this mentally, I'm gonna tire out.
Wow.
There's a lot of risks if you continue with that mindset.
That's incredible. All these people asked very awesome questions, and that's all the questions I got.
Okay, well, and I'm so thankful. Thankful for the questions. I know we got a lot of questions, and I think these are the top. And I think it's important to look at some of the trends in the questions that we saw as well. So thank you for being here and facilitating this. I just want to end with this. Generational gaps don't have to divide us. They can deepen our leadership if we let them. It's that whole permission, right? Giving people permission to think. So thank you for joining us today in this conversation. If this episode gave you a new perspective, share it with a colleague who's maybe navigating the same kinds of things that our discussion was navigating. And remember to subscribe for more future forward conversations about curiosity, leadership, deeper thinking, and connection.